So do you know how to compound your marketing and what does that really mean?
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Well, today's guest is Kevin Lee, and we're going to talk about the power of compound marketing. For those of you, what does that mean? But before we do that, we are live right now on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube and a few other places. And if you're listening to the podcast on audio, the Business Growth Show on your favorite streaming platform, we're talking to Kevin Lee. He's the CEO of many different things, but of the E-Marketing Association, and you can visit and find him on LinkedIn, of course, and at emarketingassociation.com. Hey, Kevin, welcome to today's episode.
Thanks so much for having me.
So we were talking about this concept. I was asking you, what should we talk about today? And you're like, Ford, one of the things I really specialize in, and even though you do a lot of different things, is the power of compound marketing. So explain to our viewers and listeners, what is that and why should they care?
Well, it's amazing. Like in business school and even in regular high school, they teach you about compound interest. And that works both ways, right? That works when you're saving and also works when you're paying a mortgage. But what they don't teach you is that in marketing, if you don't get every one of your marketing touch points, including after you have the sale, optimized, your ability to afford media goes away, right? Because it used to be that the more media you bought, the cheaper it was. If you were buying radio spots or TV spots or newspaper advertising 20 years ago, you could go to the sales rep and say, listen, I was going to spend $5,000 a month and you were going to give me 50 spots. How much if I spend twice as much, right? And you get a discount. Now it's the opposite, right? The more you buy, the more expensive it gets, especially in Google search and Meta, a lot of these auction platforms. So if you don't know how to optimize every touch point from the image of the ad or the text of the ad through the landing page, through the conversion rate of the landing page, through the average order value if you're retail, or the quality of the lead if you're B2B, then LTV, lifetime customer value, all those cylinders need to be firing. You screw one up, you can't afford the media, you're out of business.
I so love that. I mean, obviously, we both have worked in agencies and I own an agency and you do too. And, one of the things people always ask me is how much should they spend on advertising or what's the percentage? I speak for franchise brands and like, what's the percentage our franchisees should spend on their marketing? And I always go back to the basics, which are what's it cost you to acquire a customer? What's your conversion rate? What's your profit on the first sale? And of course, lifetime value. And sometimes, and those are things that you and I, throw out acronyms so readily. And then people will go, well, what's this lifetime value? And what do you mean the average conversion rate? But if they don't know, if they're not tracking, I mean, the first step is they've got to have a baseline in order to work against. And so you've been focusing on, a lot of things you do for nonprofit. I want to hear more about that too. But from a business standpoint, if you're growing a business, the power of compound marketing is really looking at your entire customer journey, right? And then mapping out each step.
Absolutely. What's amazing is people don't realize that after the sale, the marketing touch points continue. No amount of marketing fixes a crappy user experience in the store or by the plumbing team that comes out and installs your HVAC. You need to continue to fulfill on the brand promise you made in the very first ad that they saw, or the very first SEO listing that they saw, or the very first direct mail piece that you sent them. You started to make a promise, and then you have to be able to fulfill it on an ongoing basis. The more you do that, the higher your lifetime customer value, unless you're in the weddings business, in which case, hopefully you only sell it once. But pretty much every other business has lifetime customer value.
I look at, franchise brands because I do a lot of corporations where I do the opening keynote for the annual conference or something. And, marketing always comes up and they always say, oh, I understand it. And I always think, do you really understand it? How well are you executing? Right? It's not what you know, it's whether you can execute. And when it comes to these things, all the marketing in the world won't overcome a bad customer experience. And a lot of companies, they'll hire people like us to drive the traffic, but then the phones aren't answered. The responses aren't answered. I mean, my wife is looking for a fence right now. She owns Centerworks Pilates and it's centerworks.com. And she owns a couple studios called Bodhi Body Pilates. And it's in an area of town where she probably needs a fence, right? There's a lot of homeless people coming in and out and vandalism and spray painting graffiti. And so she must have called 7 fence companies and only one called her back within 24 hours. Several never even responded to the customer. And I'm just, as a business owner myself, I'm just thinking that just seems crazy to me.
Absolutely. There's a web version of that as well, right? Because, when I transitioned the company from being an SEO technology to a PPC technology, and then eventually into becoming an agency, I didn't want to get into web development, and I didn't want to have a creative department. But people would come to us and say, "Oh yeah, we're spending $40,000 a month on media, and we can't seem to hit our numbers." And we'd look at their website, and it'd be in Flash or Frames or something. We'd be like, "Well, no wonder. This website is horrible. It's not mobile friendly. 60% of your clicks are on mobile, and you can't even navigate it on mobile." So we ended up going into the development design business really only to fix those in between hops, right? We can't get them to call the person back, although we will absolutely advise if we think that's broken.
Well, I think that's so true when it goes to the conversion. I mean, so I do a webinar every month on unleashing AI because the topic is changing so quickly. So it's a lead generator. And for those of you watching this, you probably came in from that promotions that we do. So every month we do this promotion and we send them to a landing page that I can control. And then when they opt in, it goes through Zoho and it goes into Zapier and it does some autoresponders, gets them on Zoom and all the other, the workflow is all set up. And it's interesting because when I have clients that say, "Hey, will you help me with my workflow?" They are always interested in that top of the funnel, but they never really look at the next step in that workflow and they don't really analyze it. And if you're a small or big brand, it doesn't matter what size company you are, or if you work for a company, you really should mystery shop your own business, right? Call your phones up, fill out your contact forms, see what happens. And I mean, I've had people that say not 40,000 a month, but it was one client was $25,000 a month on pay-per-click, and they had all general ads, no segmented campaigns. They weren't doing A/B split testing. They didn't have their goals set up. They didn't have tracking set up. And I consider myself knowledgeable on pay-per-click, which is light years away from what most people have, but I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, which is that there's a whole bunch more. And that's why we've got specialists that's all they do is specialize in pay-per-click, because that's so much different, or pay-per-click for Google. That's so much different than display advertising on Meta or LinkedIn or some other channel. The channels are different and the relationship is different. So, if you're going to get ads, you definitely need to look at the compound effect, but then you've got to follow it through from the other touch points, right?
Absolutely. Another way of looking at it that may work better for some people is the removal of friction, right? Because a person who raises their hand and wants to do business with you because they engaged with your ad or called your number or clicked on your ad, whatever, like they're actually interested. I mean, you don't get that very often, right? And for you to ignore that, anytime you can remove the friction from that process and help them to get to the next step instead of standing in their way, that's a huge thing. I mean, I invented a cool technology for direct mail. We put custom QR codes on every piece of mail with a custom call to action. When the person scans that QR code, it pre-fills out the landing page for them. All they have to do is confirm that that's the information. The other great thing about it is it pings the CRM, tells the salespeople, "Hey, there's a Glengarry lead here. Don't call them right now and say at 2:36 p.m. on Tuesday you came to our website." That's creepy. Even though it's completely transparent that it says that, you don't actually want to tell people that. So, to be able to remove that friction increases your chances of success, right? And anytime you increase your chances of success, you can afford more for the media, which means you couldn't have bought, let's say, Spotify last month because your conversion rate process was crappy. Now that it's better, maybe you can afford YouTube or Spotify or TikTok that you couldn't afford last month.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I mean, I was just on the phone with the inside sales rep for Flowcode because we're a Flowcode user. And, I've talked about Flowcode on multiple episodes, but I'm not an affiliate. So full disclosure, this is for information, educational purposes only. I'm not giving you legal advice. Okay. But I'm thinking about getting the CEO on the call because I want to talk to him about it. But so my plan, I use the QR code and it's great. I use it on my trade show. It's on my business cards. And so it gives me analytics tracking to a certain level, but it doesn't do what you're talking about. The QR code isn't going to a landing page that's parsing information from that QR code because the QR code's not tagged to the list, right? I mean, that's the missing link. It's just a QR code. But if it was tagged to the list, then I could probably do it. But they don't have a system like that where you can buy a block of codes or whatever, and then have them different for every person.
Yeah, what's fascinating is it was just the Super Bowl yesterday, and
Yep.
a bunch of folks used QR codes that they got excited by. A couple of years ago when Coinbase used the QR code and blew out their servers, it was so successful. So now you're seeing QR codes all over the place. Problem is, a lot of people don't realize that while you want things like UTM's tracking parameters in your landing page so you can see what worked and what didn't, you don't want them in the QR code that the person sees because it's too dense, right? The dots are too small and too close together. You can't get your phone to lock. So there's a whole bunch of best practices just around QR codes and making them not suck, right?
Yeah.
Because if you throw up a QR code on the TV and you just spent $6 million on the ad, but you didn't bother to use a URL shortener on it, guess what? It's not going to work.
Well, it's just like, I can't remember what I was promoting the other day. Oh, I know what it is. It's an event I'm going, I should probably remember this. So I'm a faculty speaker at an event called Stage Time University. And it's an event coming up April 4th and 5th for those speakers, or whether they're new or established or even, 7-figure speakers. So I'm a speaker on the platform. And one of the ways that I get paid is to use an affiliate program. So the guy set the affiliate link up and sent it to me, but this long, goofy link. And so my team started posting it, a couple new team members on LinkedIn. I said, you guys, you can't post those links. They scream affiliate link. And so they said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I probably own 500 or 600 domains on OpenSRS and GoDaddy. I said, just go pick out a domain that we're not using. And so Profit Rich Speaker. So for those of you, this is a real link, profitrichspeaker.com will send you to the event page, and then it'll track the affiliate if someone wants to go to the event. I highly recommend that they do that. So if you're a speaker, author, trainer, consultant, and you'd like to go to the event, go to profitrichspeaker.com. But it goes back to the point of, it was, we went into GoDaddy and then forwarded the long affiliate link to the short link so that we can promote just the short link and not have to do it. The only problem we've had, maybe you can figure out this, Kevin, when I'm talking about it on shows or emailing it, I can't put the S in it for secure because it's not a separate website that has an SSL certificate. So I have to just say, go to profitrichspeaker.com to get there. So I don't know if you can get I haven't asked ChatGPT, can I put an SSL certificate on a forwarding domain? But that would be my next question.
Well, you can. It just, you probably have to have it hosted somewhere.
Yeah, you got to actually put the site somewhere and then redirect it. That was my next thought was, okay, just publish it, post it somewhere so the DNS establishes to a hosting and then forward the domain. So for those of you listening right now that just fell into a coma, don't worry about that. We got a little geeked out there for a minute, but the real power here is, regardless of your role in your company, whatever you're doing, whether you're an internal customer, as an employee, or a leader in a company or a brand, the power of compound marketing. I don't call it compound marketing, but I call it the power of the customer journey. So it's the same thing. And frictionless is really important. So the real big takeaways are: mystery shop, go back and look at your workflow, and then ask yourself, which processes should you include and which one should you take out? I know for me, when we do a website makeover for my agency, people always ask me, well, how much copy is too much? And I say, it's never too long, only too boring. And it's important that what information does that prospect need before they make a buying decision? So, my keynote fee is 25 grand. If they're going to spend 25 grand to bring me into a corporation or an association, they need to know that I'm going to deliver, right? So I have to have a great demo video and social proof and media and all these other things. But if I'm asking them to join a free webinar or a $97 webinar, if it's a tripwire, they don't need to know that much information. So it's not more information, it's the right information at the right time. And that's what you're talking about on the journey.
Absolutely. Great point.
So tell me about your nonprofit. Like, you've had your agency and you've shifted away from pay-per-click, and what are you excited about now?
Well, actually, I'm still managing millions with my team in pay-per-click, and we do a ton of SEO. This year is huge for SEO because last year,
there's all these changes happening, right?
Yeah, the helpful content update trashed a bunch of sites that were using lower quality content. And now people are also trying to future-proof themselves because the AI chatbot, they don't necessarily always give back a search engine results page. They'll just go ahead and give you the answer. Well, you want to be that answer if you solve that problem. And people have no idea of what the SEO strategy is that helps them now dominate the search engine results page, the SERP as we call it, and simultaneously prepare for the future where there may be a SERP. So we're spending a ton of effort on future-proofing people's SEO. We still manage millions a month in paid search for clients as well. But alongside this, as a parallel entrepreneur, I had previously started a company called We Care. We Care raised $8 million for nonprofits, 8.3, doing cause marketing powered shopping. And 12 years ago, Amazon came to us and said, we don't think people's behavior changes. Prove it. We ran the A/B split test. We showed a 14% revenue per visit lift, of which about 10% was conversion rate lift, and about 3 or 4% was more stuff in the shopping cart. So they terminated our agreement, then they launched Amazon Smile. They ran it for 10 years, and they pulled the plug a year ago because they didn't need the conversion rate lift anymore because of Prime, right? So I decided in the intervening 10 years to start a nonprofit focused on cause marketing. And we do cause marketing powered content, cause marketing powered events, cause marketing powered commerce, and coupons now. So we went back into commerce early when they shut down Smile, because I've got Walmart and about 800 other merchants in there to try to replace Amazon Smile. They were doing about 100 million a year in donations.
Wow.
Off of $20 billion a year in sales when they pulled the plug because they didn't need it anymore. And so some people still care enough about their nonprofit causes, especially the causes themselves, that they want an alternative to that. And so under my 501c3 Giving Forward, we've got a bunch of really cool platforms that we roll out.
That's so amazing. I mean, I just think what a great way of helping so many different people and allowing organizations to have a cause that they can, really get behind. I'm going to circle back for a second on the SEO part for a minute. And this is more selfishly me asking. Sure, we've got listeners and viewers, but this is me asking, right? So I have two websites. I've got the Profit Rich Results website, which is, of course, my keynote speaking authority as a business expert. But one of the things that we've done with an SEO standpoint is our philosophy in SEO, while I consider myself an expert, like we all know that the people who think they know everything and don't know what they don't know are scary. So while I know a lot, I'm very humbled to know what I don't know, right? That's one of the reasons I love doing this show. So one of the things we did is we went back, we pruned my website, we got all the low content out. So we of course, you can always continue to do it. It's not a one-time, one and done thing. But I got the content cleaned up, and I need to put more content, but I'm so busy with all the other shows and things I'm doing. So I'm curious. I know about the rich snippets, which used to be where, it still shows up in the rich snippet. And if your content closely answers the request in the SEO search phrase, then you're more likely to get a rich snippet, depending on your domain authority and your website authority and everything else. But is there a content strategy difference other than just saying, okay, these are the top search phrases, I'm going to put content, creative content, format it for Google the right way with lists and bullets and images and backlinks? Is there something really shifting in the SEO landscape that our listeners and viewers should do differently as they look for getting more traffic?
I would just remind people that, for one, on the content they're going to put on their own sites and in their social media, that there's a concept in journalism called inverted pyramid style content. And that's basically with putting the important stuff in the beginning and the less important stuff towards the end, which is the opposite of a mystery novel, right? If you read a mystery novel, you don't find out who killed the millionaire until the end, right? Whereas you read the New York Post, it's Butler kills millionaire as the headline, and then it tells you all about exactly what happened right in the first paragraph. So that's journalistic style inverted pyramid. And the search engines and the LLMs prefer that slightly. And so that doesn't mean that the narrative style is completely useless. You can absolutely write storytelling as well and run that in parallel, but make sure that some of your content is sort of inverted pyramid style. The other thing is that,
go ahead, keep going.
The other thing is that, have you ever heard of Barnacle SEO? You're familiar with the term?
Familiar, but I'm not sure I know in the way you're saying it. So I'm going to say no.
So what Barnacle SEO was this concept like, wait a minute, even if I'm lucky enough to get my website to rank, I'd really love to control the entire search engine results page for the problems that I solve or the thing that I sell.
I don't call it Barnacle, but I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some people call it parasite SEO. There's a variety of different terms. Other people just lump it in with digital PR, right? Which is just the more places my stuff is, the more bites at the apple I get to get it to rank. Because for some of the content you create or you co-create with others, it's more likely to rank if it's somewhere else, not on your website.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe the right place for that content is somewhere else. And that's been a good practice for at least 5 to 10 years. But now that you're simultaneously educating an LLM, a large language model AI, well, where does it learn about you and what you do and how great you are? Those same places that you would put your syndicated content or try to get positive reviews or try to do digital PR, right? So it's more important than ever that you think about every possible place you could have content. And you can snippetize it, you can repurpose it, you can abstract it, you can put it out there. And the more places that the LLM finds it, the more likely you are to be influencing the LLM's opinion of you as a brand, which of course future proofs your SEO. But it's also good for SEO now because those same places on publishing on LinkedIn, doing a Medium articles or whatever it is, all those places that you can put content, even if it's a little bit of a summarization of a conversation we just had, right? Just go ahead and put that up in different places. It'll increase your overall visibility now with your old school SEO and controlling the search engine results page, but it also increases your odds for the future. So that's really that's what I'm recommending for people. Of course, they're a little skeptical because they're like, well, wait a minute, if I have to include content marketing in your retainer every month, it's going to be 2 or 3 times as high as just SEO. Well, you can do it yourself. I'll teach you how to do it.
People won't do it.
Somebody has to do it, right?
Right.
Somebody has to make the editorial calendar, decide where should this piece of content live, decide who should I co-create content with, where do the testimonials live? All those important conversations need to be had, and they need to go into a planning document.
Yeah, it's so true. We use Airtable for doing that, and I've got a good team that does a lot of it. But, you know, like this episode, so we're live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and a few other places. Then when we get the episode recording done, well, first then we turn it into the podcast. So then that goes on the podcast through all the streaming platforms. And then we take it into AI and write a show summary and show notes, and then social media posts that allow us to repurpose the content. And then we use a couple other AI tools to upload the whole episode. And one of them is GetMunch and the other one is repurpose.io. And so we'll load the episode into GetMunch, and then it'll go through our episode and it'll say, oh, well, these are some really great sound bites, and it gives us an SEO ranking. Now, I haven't dug into it enough to know, I know it does it, but I haven't really looked at my metrics, enough to know, okay, yes, it's actually giving me the right thing, but repurposing it. And then, we've done some repurposing on TikTok and a few other places, but I always tell people, social media websites are just databases. And what can you do with a database? There's content, and you can have a profile, and you can search. And so what is the dynamic of that particular site? Because every site's different. People will tell me, well, Facebook doesn't work, or LinkedIn doesn't work, or pay-per-click doesn't work. And I always think, as a marketer myself, I think every medium works if it's got your ideal client in there, and if you're adding something of value to the conversation. Like LinkedIn is all about the conversation, where YouTube is all about content. I mean, they're totally two different things. And if you apply the wrong strategy to the wrong one, I know you don't get the results. I've proven it by spending thousands of dollars of my own money. So I think that, what we're saying here on this episode is so true, that at the end of the day, it's content. So I have a question for you. Since everybody can have access now to ChatGPT, and Bard is no longer called Bard, so now it's Google Gemini. So Gemini is the old Bard, and Gemini is, got information from YouTube and Google Scholar and all other places. So you've got Microsoft with Copilot, you've got Google with Gemini, and then you've got Amazon with Anthropic. And I know we're talking about the large language models. You've heard Kevin today talk about LLMs. What he's really talking about is the engines that drive all the other AI tools that are out there. And those are like what I consider the 3 big players. Maybe there's more, but those are the 3. How do you feel? So here, this is what you call long road to a tiny house. So here's my question. If anybody can now create compelling content and repurpose their content, because these AI tools make it so easy to do, we know about the pitfalls of AI. We'll park that for today. If the search engines are AI and the people are using content to AI, at what point do we become irrelevant to where it doesn't really help the game anymore? So I'm looking forward, like I'm trying to be Wayne Gretzky, and don't go where the puck is, go where the puck is going to be. I'm looking at this going, this is accelerating so quickly. At what point does content marketing really become obsolete, where the face-to-face is going to be not the deep fake face-to-face, but I mean, you know where I'm going with this, Kevin. So
Yeah.
what's the future hold? Do you know? If you like, I've
I
got a
mean,
crystal ball. It's right here. So if I pull up my crystal ball, what is the future?
well, I think what's helpful when trying to predict the future, and obviously we can't predict it perfectly, and even the folks working on it can't fully predict it because they're changing their roadmaps all the time. But if you think like a Google engineer or a Bing engineer, you think about really delighting the consumer, it's got to be great content. But if you look at the helpful content update, which completely decimated a bunch of sites' traffic in the last 6 to 9 months on Google, and you think, well, what was behind that? Like, why would they call it the helpful content update? I guess there was a whole bunch of crappy content that wasn't that
Right.
helpful. AIs are really good at creating non-helpful content if they're not properly supervised by humans. Humans can make AI-related content better. But the other thing to keep in mind is sort of content authenticity. So I think that you mentioned in person and face-to-face. The transcript of this conversation, right, is filled with a whole bunch of really great information. Maybe some of it's helpful, right? It will get ingested by at least one large language model because you'll put it up on YouTube and you'll break it up. It'll get ingested maybe multiple times. And because we're not able to deep fake ourselves that well yet, right? For now, it's authentic as well. So I have a feeling that if I were an engineer at Google and I were sort of thinking about, well, where should I find great new content that's authentic and helpful, I'd say, well, probably YouTube transcripts, probably transcripts of podcasts, probably interviews that happened live at conferences, or conference coverage, of a keynote speaker, right? Of course, some keynote speakers are canned and everything's the same. But I think events are partially back because they're content engines,
I
right?
agree.
I mean, events are back strong. I'm an investor in Beyond Ordinary Events that does Possible down at the Fountain in Miami Beach, where Elon and Linda had their conversation last year at the launch event. And events are absolutely back. As a matter of fact, under Giving Forward, we invented this really cool thing we call Good Picks, where we give away professional headshots instead of a regular booth because it's a completely green giveaway and it's something everybody wants. And we made it turnkey and it's philanthropic. But that's an aside. But events and content, great quality content, where it can be sort of almost spontaneously created is really, I think, will end up being quite valuable. Right now, not all of it will rank, just like, you can't have a hit movie with every production or a hit song with every song. As long as you're consistently creating great quality content, some of it's going to bubble to the surface. And those are going to be the winners. So, don't just hit, generate content on the AI and not even review it.
Oh,
But it could be really good to give you content ideas, right? So if you think about franchisors are always like, well, what the heck should we put up as content, either to help our franchisees or to help sell more franchises, or
right. That's the
maybe
two
even
sides.
for the consumer, right? They've got a huge untapped, vehicle in that they could have the franchisees talk to each other about stuff, right? And decide which of that is good enough information to put out there to help sell franchises or to help educate the consumer, or just try to do some fun social media contest between McDonald's franchise owners. Like, I don't know, I would be interested in that, right? And
Yeah.
they don't tap into their ecosystem. Also, retail brands routinely have policies with their employees, or like, you can't mention us on your social media.
Right.
What?
Right.
You can't mention on like, you work there and you have followers and you're not allowed to help promote the brand. I mean, some of the stuff is just, what backwards, right?
Yes,
Where
it
you
is.
have
It
an
is.
asset you should be using and you're not using it.
It's so true. I mean, in the franchising world, the franchisor wants franchisees to follow the system. The franchisee wants the franchisor to drive more business. A lot of the franchise brands, I mean, there's hundreds of them, actually thousands now. And, some really have it figured out. They're really empowering their franchisees, and they're really, leveraging their franchise advisory council and committees, and they're really having great communication. Then you got the brands that just don't communicate that too much, or they've sold out to a private equity group that owns multiple brands underneath. Some are run well and some aren't. So we know there's a big difference, but I think the real key goes back to the customer experience. Customers want to feel that they're working with a brand that's authentic and transparent. And that's one of the ways that they can do it if they empower their franchisees to leverage it. As a keynote speaker on that topic, I go in and I speak on local area marketing and business success. And on the pre-event calls, sometimes I'm told, don't mention this, don't mention the web, don't mention anything. We have a preferred vendor that does everything. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but your preferred vendor isn't responding to Google reviews, like the most basic thing, And so, I have to do what the brand wants because that's their brand. But, certainly at the end of the day, I think if you remove the technology, I always say, don't get seduced by technology. What is the experience like, and work forward from there. I think people want to make it more complicated. I don't think it is that complicated. I know for me, I have plenty of shiny objects to do. I'm a classic. If you're an EOS or entrepreneur operating system manager, you've got the visionary and the integrator. I'm a visionary all day long. If I didn't have Devin on my team and Crystal to make sure I was on at the right time and that I got my graphics loaded and then, I'm going to be off the channel onto something new, a new shiny object. Now I'm like, I need to go figure out this new process and go look into your giving association, because there's brands that I work with that I don't have a solution. And I'd love to be able to just say, hey, go here. If I do come across an ideal client for you for that, and they want to add some type of nonprofit or giving method, what website should they go to check it out?
It's best if they just reach out to me on LinkedIn, because
Perfect.
we don't even have all of the stuff in development up live, right? So there's some stuff we're working on now, specifically in the areas of couponing, like where you can sort of stimulate donation with special coupons that isn't even live yet, but it'll be live within the next couple of maybe a month or so. And so there's that, plus the regular Smile Replacement, the charity mall, which is at givingforward.org. And we've got goodpicks.org. And so it's best if they just ping me on LinkedIn.
So
and
Kevin
say,
Lee,
hey,
just like it sounds, Lee. And you can also check him out. You'll know you got the right one if you go to emarketingassociation.com and you see his brands there. And also, Giving Forward, is it givingforward.com or .org? What is that one?
.org. I got to redirect to .com. I think I may be redirecting it.
Yeah.
I'll have to double check.
No worries. Well, I certainly appreciate any closing thoughts you have for our listeners today before we wrap up. And then when I do the show ending, I definitely want you to stick around.
Thank you. Final thoughts is the rate of change in 2024 is going to be higher than last year. And last year was crazy. So, between this, the election and socioeconomic changes and international politics and all the possible stuff that could hit the fan, you got AI on top of it, right? So you definitely going to have to be on top of your game this year. So, keep yourself up to date.
I think that's so important. And for those of you, make sure you share this episode, like and comment, and we'll see you next time on Fordify Live.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.